Welcome back. All right, so this is a super interesting study that came out of one of our local universities, and it was a study about anxiety. And what these researchers discovered is that the patients that they were looking at who had anxiety had a specific nutrient deficiency. Now, this is really compelling because we tend to think of nutrient deficiencies, for example, vitamin C, as causing something like rickets, or vitamin D deficiency as causing osteoporosis, or vitamin E deficiency can cause neuropathy. But when do we ever think of a vitamin deficiency causing a mood problem, a behavior issue, anxiety, panic disorder? Things that cause us to feel uncomfortable. I don't know that we ever really think about it as a nutrient deficiency. And so that's what these scientists discovered is that they looked at over 300 patients who had anxiety symptoms. And what they discovered was their brains were different. Their brains were missing something critical. When they looked at the 300 scans of the normal control patients, they didn't have the same deficiency. So let's take a look at the details of this study. So the scientists looked at two groups of images or imaging, and they used very specialized imaging called MRS, and that's magnetic resonance spectroscopy, mouthful. And what this kind of imaging does is it works like MRI in that it uses the radio frequencies and the magnetic fields to get images of the brain, but it wasn't giving them kind of the composition of the brain, but it was giving them the chemical or the chemistry within the brain. So that's the spectroscopy part. So MRI versus MRS. And what these scientists found is that in the anxiety complaints symptom group or the anxiety prone group, this group of patients had 8% less choline, less vitamin choline than the group that's normal. And so the scientists note that 8% doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is a significant and pretty remarkable difference compared to the group that didn't have this choline deficiency. So that is really stunning that a vitamin deficiency is associated with behavioral symptoms. All right, so where does this choline come from? And let's dig into choline. Okay, so choline is actually often derived from animal sources. So animal foods and eggs, dairy, things like that. So lower choline foods would be in beans and certain vegetables. So the heaviest source of choline comes from animal-rich foods, and the lower source comes from things like beans and other vegetables. Now, the interesting thing to note is that there have been studies to show that there are certain sources of choline that are better absorbed than others. And what choline does in the body is it changes the microbiome. So it helps the body break down fats. It also helps the liver in removing fat from the liver. So this is an interesting thing. So we already said vitamin C deficiency is associated with rickets, vitamin E associated with neuropathy, vitamin D deficiency associated with osteoporosis, choline deficiency now associated with anxiety, right? These are all associations. And the interesting thing about choline deficiency is that it can also cause fatty liver. So, not enough choline can cause the fat to kind of get glommed up in the liver and the body not able to use the fat to make new cells and new cell parts. So, this is a really fascinating nutrient. And I hope the scientists go on to find out how these patients do when they supply them or supplement them with choline. Now, there is one case study I put in the link below. So if you look at the description below this video, you'll see a case study of someone who reported giving a patient supplements of choline and some other supplements and how their anxiety symptoms changed.